Hey guys, I know I haven't been super active on YouTube. Had a lot going on, with the business. Kind of slowed down this project, but got it back together and running with the T56, and wanted to shoot a quick video to kind of show you guys how it drives and give you my initial impressions on the swap, and kind of catch up with some of the YouTube content. So for those of you that don't know, 99 single cab, we call it the Gap single cab. It's kind of the shop truck. It's been my truck for about 10 years and it's gone through a lot of different combinations, but kind of recently settled on more of a pro touring style setup with some stickier wheels on all four corners and a little bit of suspension that might handle a little better than your traditional truck. It's basic 6-liter heads cam intake motor, but it does have twin 64mm turbos on it, running full-on fuel system with triple pumps. I don't know if you can see that in the video, the fuel cell. Recently did the T56 swap, technically a Tremec Magnum F, but it's a T56 variant, just set up to hold a little bit more power. So wanted to give you guys a rundown of that combination, what parts I chose, why I chose them, kind of some of the roadblocks I encountered during the swap, because I know that the manual swaps on these trucks are getting more and more popular, it seems like, and guys are always interested to know kind of what it takes to do it, what I like to do or what parts I chose, and I can kind of fill in some of the gaps there. Let's take a quick look under the hood just for some of you guys that haven't seen. Nothing fancy there, but obviously a ton of little modifications and supporting mods. Again, twin 64mm turbos, 6-liter, basically a 228 cam in it, ported Trailblazer intake, TEA 243 heads, and all of your supporting modifications. Well, let me go ahead and cut. We'll get in the truck and we'll pick it back up when we're getting ready to drive off here. Alright, we'll go ahead and get this thing fired up, and then once we get on the road, I'll start kind of talking about what we did to this thing and what parts we chose and go from there. Truck runs on Holley EFI. It's Terminator X system. I've had pretty good luck with it. Still working on some of the tuning. Got a little ways to go on that, but did a few tweaks. I've got maybe 100 miles or less on the T56 combo, but have done a couple tuning adjustments after the manual swap just to try to get that to run out a little bit smoother. Just a full disclosure, I'm not going to beat on it on this video because I'm still kind of breaking in components, so if that's what you're looking for, stay tuned. I'll have something like that once we get it broken in, but just going to kind of drive it somewhat easy today and kind of overview what we got in this thing and talk a little bit about that. Hopefully the audio turns out alright. I'm sure there's a bunch of cabin noise between the exhaust and my interior rattling and my Holley 3.5-inch dash not staying glued to the windshield, but hopefully you guys will be able to hear me all right and I don't have to recut this. So while I'm waiting on this pedestrian here and some of this traffic, kind of give a rundown on it. Again, Tremec Magnum F transmission. I did the wide ratio because I've got 456 gears in this. It doesn't have any trouble getting up and going. Got a Tilton ST246 twin disc in it. I needed a clutch that would hold the power this truck makes, but I also wanted a clutch that would drive pretty well. For those of you that have driven dual disc or triple disc clutches, you know that they can be a little bit finicky on the street, but the Tilton offers an organic twin disc, which is still rated for 850 rear wheel torque. That's what I went with. and it drives pretty well. It's a little chattery sometimes, but again, we're still breaking things in, so that might get better. I did do a quick time steel SFI approved bell housing. Some of this stuff that this truck might do might be in sanctioned competition use, and they're going to want to see that SFI bell housing on there. And in all reality, you know, there is the possibility a clutch could come apart, and if that happens, I don't want to lose my feet. So it was a little bit more of a headache trying to get the SFI bell housing in there, but we wanted to do it for a couple of reasons there. And when I say it was some trouble, for guys that don't have the experience with it, you have to index it. So it has to be concentric to the crank, it has to be parallel to the crank, and the machining tolerances between the factory and the SFI bell housing just aren't as tight as a lot of people would hope that they are. So, you know, you end up mocking it up and trying to make some adjustments. I ran into some trouble where the scatter shield on the front of that bell housing interfered with a few places on the oil pan, with the truck oil pan. I had to grind that down so that I could get it to sit flush against the block and parallel, you know, to the mounting face of the crank as well. So once I got that dialed in, I was able to measure concentricity, which is basically the alignment of the bell housing on the crank centrally. Mine was off. I had to order some offset bell housing alignment dowels to kind of bring that over a little bit and play around with that until we could get it concentric. And all of that is important because you don't want your transmission operating in a bind. If it is not in line with the crankshaft and it's off center, your shifts are going to be hard, it's going to side load your bearings, and it's going to be even more prominent on setups that are on the more aggressive side of things like this truck is. We've got solid engine mounts, so any sort of vibration gets transmitted through to the drivetrain, and I'm sure the video will pick up some of that. I've been battling a little bit of noise coming up through the shifter, just general cabin noise. Of course, some of the interior is still out of the truck, getting ready to redo the interior on it, so you know that'll be a whole other project there. But from the bell housing, talked about the tilt and twin disc. I'm using a regular GM F-body slave cylinder in it, and trying to get the slave cylinder alignment put together with the twin disc coupled with the SFI bell housing, which the scatter shield sets that bell housing a little bit deeper towards the rear of the truck. We had some issues getting the correct air gap or the correct slave cylinder spacing to the clutch finger set up. So we actually had Monster Clutch machine us a custom spec slave cylinder spacer. And the reason for that is, of course, you can buy shim kits from TIC Performance. We sell them. I've used them on Corvette before. They work great. But we needed so much adjustment that the slave cylinder actually was coming up off of the locating lip of the front plate of the transmission. So Monster Clutch machined me one that went over that locating lip and had its own locating lip for the slave cylinder, so that we were able to get it dialed in without having to worry about the slave cylinder now being off center. So that worked out well, but it was a little bit of a snag. I mean, between aligning the bell housing and getting the geometry correct on the slave cylinder, I probably had weeks in this. And granted, I don't work on it every day. It's a slow project for me, but it took a little while to get that part of things sorted out. But I wanted it to be right. You know, I didn't want to have to deal with not having enough clutch throw, which is still, you know, a little tight here, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But you know, I wanted to spend the time to get it together one time because I didn't want to tear it apart again right after putting it together to try to make more adjustments. So on that subject, F-body slave, and we are running the factory truck master cylinder for this generation, but I am running Atomic Fabrication steel pedal box, and that eliminates a lot of the flex that you get, which contributes to some of the pedal travel issues on these things. So that setup works out pretty well. But it, even after bleeding it out 100%, still have some struggles with the throw. So this twin disc is grabby right off the floor. It doesn't actually fully engage until you're up, I don't know, a third of the way in travel, but it does kind of roll the truck right off the floor, and that's just because of disc wobble on a twin disc. I mean, anybody that's driven them knows you get a little bit of disc chatter, and those discs kind of skip off of one another. So, you know, you have to make sure you're fully disengaged, pedal, you know, mashed into the floor in order to get this thing to exchange gears without nicking the synchros. I am trying trying to work on a solution for an adjustable master cylinder for these trucks. I do think that they could benefit from it. You know, being able to set that pedal height where you like it, and a lot of that's personal preference too. But working on that, and I did have to cut away some of the firewall insulation underneath the pedal. I don't know if that's present on original manual trucks. This was an automatic truck, but anyway, some of that factory firewall insulation got in the way of getting full pedal travel, so I did cut that out, and it gave me kind of that last little quarter inch I needed to be a little bit more comfortable in driving this. So got that done. I previously had a custom drive shaft made for this when it had the automatic in it. My length was pretty good. It might be a hair short, but all I had to do there was swap the yoke. The T56 Magnum has a 31, I think it's 31 spline output shaft yoke, so I had to get a matching drive shaft yoke that will fit the Magnum. So I got it with matching U-joint sizes to my custom shaft, and got that squared away. For the trans mount, some guys will modify their factory cross member, other guys will fabricate a new cross member. You have to remember that the 99 and early 2000 trucks had a different transmission cross member than the late 2000 through 07 trucks had. The early trucks had an offset cross member. That's what this truck is. It's a 99. So I actually had Tyler Scruggs, I think he's DTR or DRT Fab is his company name. A lot of you guys know him. He does the custom cross members for these trucks. I had him build me a T56 cross member for this, and initially my fitment needed some adjustment because I had solid mounts. I didn't have the traditional kind of up and down adjustment that you can have if you've got a more compliant mount like a urethane mount or a rubber mount. So I had to actually have him drop the mount pad on the cross member down some so I could fit a traditional mount. But once we got that set up, man, it fits great. Much lighter than the original cross member, and I'm really happy with how that turned out. So, you know, whether you want to modify your original cross member or you want to go with something tubular, it's bolt-in, you know, there's a few solutions out there for that. As far as getting this transmission hooked up in this truck and wired, you know, my combination might be a little unique because we're running Holley EFI, so I got a little bit more liberty in terms of some of the factory systems that factory EFI might want to have on it. But I thought that the easiest solution would be using Bowler Transmission's universal T56 swap harness. It handles reverse lockout. Hang on, you're probably not going to be able to hear me. That's always a rough interchange right there, so wanted to make sure we got around that corner with some speed. The Bowler Transmission makes a harness that handles reverse lockout, it handles reverse lights, it handles VSS output, and there were a lot of features in that harness that really simplified the swap in my opinion. Reverse lockout, I didn't want to consume an output from the Holley for the reverse lockout, so the Bowler all-in-one harness does that for me. It wired right into my existing reverse lights. You've got wiring under there in the original park neutral switch under the truck that was on the original transmission, the auto. You can pick up your reverse light feed there. You can pick up power and ground from that harness to power the Bowler harness. You can do key on ignition from that harness to power the Bowler harness. And you can jumper a few wires under there if you want to bypass a neutral safety switch and just get your truck running. In addition to that, the Bowler harness has a configurable VSS output. So you can set up the amount of VSS count that you want on your output to match your factory speedometer or your aftermarket EFI, whatever you need. So not a lot of the gauges work in this truck because of the Holley, but the speed does work because I'm running that Bowler all-in-one harness and I have the correct output tooth count. Can't remember if it's 40 count or 17. I think that the original T56 called for 17, but this converts it to a 40 count output, which is what you need for the truck's EFI. So that made things a lot easier. Aside from that, I mean, that pretty much sums it up. I mean, if you've got an original auto truck, you've got to handle the wiring and you've got to handle getting the pedal in there and the clutch components, obviously the cross member. But, you know, you could do this a lot more simply if you were willing to run a factory style bell housing or a traditional style single disc clutch that didn't require some of the geometry changes that we needed for our more radical setup in this truck. But I mean, it's really a lot of fun to drive. You know, I don't have the best roads around here in terms of demoing some of the truck's capability and, you know, really getting through a lot of gears. Got a lot of traffic in the area that I live. I can't wait to get out of here and get to a place that is a little more rural. You know, I'm hoping to do that at some point here in the next few years, but for now, this is where we drive, so, you know, can't really thrash on it too much, or not too many corners to really hammer in this thing, but, you know, at least give me an opportunity to kind of hear it. So that kind of wraps up what I wanted to cover. You know, if you've got any questions, definitely post them in the comments or shoot me an email through the shop. I am hoping to bring on a lot of these T56 swap components and put them on the website for guys that are looking to do this, because there's not really a sort, like a one-stop shop that you can go to source for these things right now. So I'd like to be able to consolidate some of the stuff that we can get, so you guys are able to shop it directly from our site. But man, it's definitely a lot of fun to drive. You know, this truck is kind of raw. You can hear everything going on in the interior. You know, it is definitely not as refined as like my old Corvette was, but it is a lot of fun to drive, and I'm looking forward to getting it broken in and kind of finishing up some of the smaller projects on it and really seeing what sort of potential it has. But I'll continue to drive here a little bit, and I'll stop talking so you guys can listen to it go through the gears. In a little bit, we'll open up the cutout so you can kind of hear what it sounds like, you know, with a little bit more exhaust note. I've got some sound deadener in here, and I've got mufflers out the back, and I don't like things super loud when I'm trying to drive them, so this truck's plenty loud enough even with the cutouts closed, but with the cutouts open, yeah, it's pretty nuts. It looks like we got I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but it looks like we've got one of those Lamborghini SUVs over here next to us. It's a shame that this thing's not broken in all the way yet. It'd be nice to pick on that a little bit if we had enough of an opening in traffic, but not today, I guess. I'm sure they could care less about my little poverty truck over here. Yeah, well, we're waiting on this light. Oh, there it goes. I was going to crack the cutout so you guys could hear it, but we'll do it at the next one. Gonna be a lot of fun once I can really get into it. So it's pretty mild-mannered compared to what you might think based on the combination. And you know, the springs and the wastegates, they got 11-pound springs in it right now, so you know, it'll build boost pretty quick, but it's not too crazy. But it really drives pretty good considering it's a 20 or 25-year-old truck and it's got all this done to it. And, you know, stiff spring rates and the coilovers on the front, clamped overloops in the back. And, you know, it's really not that bad all in all considering what's done to it. And, you know, it's got a radio in it. I got the AC on right now. I'm comfortable. You know, I can't complain in that regard. And that's what I wanted. I wanted something that I could enjoy on the street. When I sold my Corvette last year, I thought, well, I'm going to finish this truck out the way I want it, and that'll be what I enjoy, and I want to be able to, you know, drive it on the weekends and have some fun in it. And then, you know, when the events like LS Fest come around or Pro Touring truck shootout, we can take it out to the events and, you know, have some fun out there too. So I'll go ahead and open up the cutout so you guys can hear that. We'll do a little bit of driving with those open, and, you know, that'll pretty much wrap it up. I'm kind of driving home from the shop. I'm almost home now, so you know, this should be pretty close to the end here. Well, I appreciate you guys watching, and again, if you've got any questions, just let me know. I'm always happy to talk about my own projects or help out with your guys' projects anytime I can. You know, I'm hoping to bring some more content to the platform here, and maybe some stuff that's a little more exciting once we get this broke in. I do have a lot of footage of like the Ride-Tech suspension installation, but just haven't been able to edit that and get it on. The editing process I do myself, and it's just pretty time consuming and cumbersome. So it's tough to sometimes get some of those, you know, fully edited videos out that I've done in the past. So that's why I wanted to take the day, just do a little bit quicker of a rough cut like this. And I'll leave you guys with that, and hopefully we'll have some more videos out soon. And you know, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel so you get those updates when we put them out, and we'll go from there. I appreciate it, guys.